All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Hopefully, everybody had a great weekend. So we'll go ahead and get started here. If you got a question, go ahead and post it there. It'll either be below the video if you're like on a mobile device or something like that, or it'll be on the right-hand side if you're on a larger device like a computer or a laptop or something like that. So just post your questions there, click send, and it'll show up on there. So we'll go ahead and get started here with Mark F. All right. So Mark F asks, I think I have a tendency to slightly bend my left arm during the backswing. I'm a right-handed golfer. How important is keeping the left arm straight during the backswing? So it's not one of the most important things. There's pros and cons to keeping it dead rigidly straight and letting it bend a little bit and bending it too much. So basically, you want to find a happy medium that works the best for you. There's no hard or fast rule that says you have to keep that left arm straight. And there's nothing that says you have to have a little bend in it or that you need to bend it a lot. It's really kind of, you got to find what works best for you. But the argument is here that if I have a dead straight lead arm, so I'm creating a wider arc, that's basically, what people say, hey, you're going to have more speed if you have a straighter arm because you're creating a wider arc with your hands, which is true. You can create more speed when you do that. And also, it takes away a degree of freedom. So if I take away this joint basically, and just keep it dead straight, then I may be more consistent if I don't have another moving part essentially. So that's basically the argument for having that lead arm, and that's why you see a lot of tour players. It's very common instruction for a long time. That's why you see a lot of tour players like Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy. A lot of tour players with that dead straight lead arm. But now you're seeing a lot more tour players with a bent lead arm, like a Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, Lee Westwood. You're seeing a lot more players with that bent lead arm. And really what it comes down to is it really doesn't make that much of a difference in what I've seen. As long as you're not excessively bending your arm, it's really not going to make much of a difference. So here's why. Basically, if I have my arm dead straight here as I'm going to the top, sure, I'm going to create a wider arc. But also, look what happens if I bend my arm. If I have a little bit of bend in my arm, I'm actually creating a longer arc. So I might have a wider arc one way with a dead straight arm, but I have a longer arc and a not much shorter arc with a bent lead arm. So really, I would do what is comfortable for you. There's pros and cons to each one, and really, it doesn't make that much of a difference. Where you might be getting in trouble is if you're really bending that lead arm, meaning I'm getting up at the top of the screen, I've got like a 90-degree angle between it on my lead arm. If that's what's happening, then that can cause some issues. That doesn't mean that you can't play great golf. You absolutely can't. But usually when I see people with that really, really bent lead arm, there's also some issues going on there that are going to make things really difficult. So one is that I typically see is they don't get an adequate shoulder turn, meaning as they're going up to the top, we're not turning our shoulders. If you're continuing to turn your shoulders and you get a good power turn, like Clay talks about in the Top Speed Golf System, then most people intuitively aren't going to try to bend their arms a bunch. They're going to be trying to get that club out going wide and as long as they can. Whereas someone who's maybe restricting their shoulder turn or not getting a big shoulder turn, as they get up to the top of the swing, they're going to tend to want to do this to get the club back there so that they can create some space and power. And when you do that, then you will cause some inconsistencies because you're not going to have a lot of speed in the downswing. And typically, when you have a lot of bend in that arm, you're going to start casting the club from the very beginning. So if you're looking at your swing on video, one thing that you said is that you think you have a tendency. So what that tells me is that maybe you're not really sure because you haven't videotaped your swing. You got to videotape your swing, especially if you're moving through the system. It's really, really important to videotape your swing. You have to see what's going on. We all know feel isn't always real, right? So whenever we look on video, I think a lot of times, especially if it's the first time, if you've ever looked at your swing on video for the first time, it's kind of a lot of times it's pretty surprising what you see the first time. I know it was very surprising for me the first time that I saw my swing on video because I didn't realize I was doing the things that were going on there. So it's it's a big, if you're looking to improve, you got to work with video and take a look at your swing and see what's going on there, especially if you're working through the Top-Speed Golf system, because there's just no way to know for sure if you're nailing the pieces unless you're videotaping your swing. So Mark, take a look at your swing on video. See if you're getting that. If you're getting a good shoulder turn and you have a little bit of bend in your lead arm like this, don't worry about it at all. Honestly, it's not a big deal. And really, if you feel like that doesn't mean that keeping that lead arm dead straight and rigid may not help you. It could, but in my experience, it's just not going to make that big of a difference. You're more than likely, it's going to actually be more difficult for you to implement that in your swing. It's going to take some time for you to implement those things in your swing, and probably won't make that much of a difference in the long run. So I would rather you spend some time on some things in your swing that are actually going to help you to get a lot better. So that's going to be making sure that your spine is nice and stable throughout the swing. These are the pieces of the Top-Speed Golf system. So stable fluid spine, making sure that you're getting a big shoulder turn, making sure that you've got some lag in the downswing, making sure that your lead shoulder, ankle, or lead shoulder, hip, and ankle are all lined up in a straight line, slightly angled away from the target at contact. That's our compression line course from the Top-Speed Golf system. And then make sure that we're releasing that club properly, so we're getting that straight line release out in front. You want to make sure that you're nailing. Those are the most important things that you need to be doing in the golf swing, and those are going to fix most of the issues. If you're seeing that you're not getting that full shoulder turn, and then you're seeing that bend of the lead arm, I'd imagine if you worked on your shoulder turn and getting that big shoulder turn, work on the power turn course in the Top-Speed Golf system, you're going to see that you're not going to feel like you need to bend that lead arm a bunch at the top of the swing. So work through that. That's what I highly recommend doing. To get to the power turn course on the website, if you are indeed seeing that, all you got to do is click the instruction tab at the top of the screen there. And then from there, click the Top-Speed Golf system. And once you go to that page, you can click each piece of the Top-Speed Golf system that you may need to work on. So the power turn course, you'll see right there, and you'll be able to work on that. All right, so let's keep on moving through here and continue to post your questions on here. Let's see if we've got any questions posted. So we don't have any questions posted after Corey of what I'm seeing here. I'll refresh this to make sure after I answer Corey's question, but make sure you post your questions on there, and we'll continue to answer them moving forward here. So Corey SE says, please explain the swing plane. I've seen it drawn from the ball through the shaft from setup, but if I shallow out the club on the downswing, where the point of the shaft just outside the target line, what swing plane is different? Help me understand the difference. Also, how best to see your response. Thanks. So hopefully, Corey, the way that you can see my response is to actually watch it live. So hopefully you're watching it live right now. That's really the only way to see this response, unless you watch the archived office hours, which I'll be posting after we finish office hours today at 6 Eastern or so. Usually I try to archive it within the first half hour after we get done with the office hours. So swing plane can be a very confusing topic, because really you establish your swing plane. It's not going to be the same for every single person. Now, what you can do is at address, you can draw what's called our elbow plane, which gives us a pretty close, it's not an exact science, but it gives us a pretty good idea of where we would want the swing plane to be. So the way that you draw this elbow plane is very, very easy. All you do is get your down the line view here, and you want to make sure that you're shooting down your toes, essentially. Basically, right down the hands. You want to be about waist level, and you want to be far away enough that you and the club stay in the frame throughout the entire swing. So I don't have enough space to actually do that in here, and we're actually at about eye level with the camera, so I'm not going to be able to show you exactly what that angle would look like. But the easiest way to do that is to actually take a club and place it on the ground and point it out at a target. So if you watch here, if I drop this camera angle down, you're going to see I have this club on the ground. Let's pretend that I have it pointed out at a target out in the distance. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to situate this camera to where it's shooting right down that club or alignment stick on the ground. Then when I go to address the ball, if I grab another club here, I'm going to set up, and I'm going to have my feet pretty close to it. I'm going to have my hands to where they're directly over top of that stick. If I were to drop something from my hands, it would land right on that club or alignment stick on the ground. And this is going to give me that perfect camera alignment. So again, shooting right down our hands, right down pretty close to the toe line here. If you have the camera situated anywhere, shooting anywhere down in this area, it's going to be pretty close to the right camera angle. But getting it right down the hands, that's perfectly where we want to be. And the way that you do that, set up the camera right down that alignment stick on the ground, set up your hands directly above that, just like you see here. If you were to drop something from your hands, it would land just on it. Now you want to be far away enough to where you and the club never leave the camera frame throughout the entire swing. So as I'm going up to the top, as you can see here, this camera is already too close. My head's getting cut off a little bit. You can see the club head, as I go up to the top, it's getting cut off. We want to be able to see everything. So far away enough that to where you and the club stay in the frame throughout the entire time. That's going to be the perfect camera angle. I know some of you are in hitting bays and things like that. Maybe you don't have the room to do that. You just got to do the best you can. But if you can, try to get far away enough. Typically, it's going to be about 10 feet back or something like that is about how far is a good camera angle. And then the other thing is you want to be about waist level. So that's going to be pretty close to the level of the hands. That's going to be pretty close, about waist levels, right where you want to be. So roughly, 3 to 4 feet off the ground is about where you're going to be when you're setting up that camera. And then what you're going to do is you'll film from down the line, and at address here, you'll draw a line from the hosel of the club right here, draw a line all the way up through the point of my trail elbow here. And that's what we call the elbow plane. And again, it's not an exact science. It's not telling me that's exactly what your club plane is going to be, because there's some things that can change it. But theoretically, that would be a pretty good swing plane. If you were to put that on a tour player, then you would actually see that is going to be pretty close to their swing plane throughout the swing. Now, if you get someone who's got some early extension where they're coming in like this, or maybe someone who's just coming down steep like this, or someone who's coming in very, very shallow or things like that, their swing plane may change a little bit. And the way to see that is, again, you want to make sure you have this camera angle. And what you can do is you can get them coming into impact. And you want to pause it right at impact. And at impact, you'll draw a line down the shaft. And effectively, when you're looking from down the line, that's going to be about what the swing plane is that you've established at contact. And again, it's not an exact science, but it's going to be pretty darn close to giving you an indication of where that swing plane is. And now, from that impact position, after you draw on that line on there, what you can do is you can rewind that and see where that club is in relationship to that line that you just drew along the shaft. So if I have that line, it's right in here, and I have this club head way over here working from the inside, that's going to be an indication of an in to out path. If I have that plane that's like right in here, and I have that club working down this way, that's going to be an indication of an out to in path. So it can give you an idea of what the swing plane is. But really, if you just understand some basic ball flight laws, you can have a really good idea of whether you swung in to out, out to in, on plane, if you just understand those things. So really, really easy to understand. I'll go through it really quickly for you. And really, if you understand these things, you're going to know a lot more than most people out there. You're going to have a leg up on people that you're playing with above a lot of people. So first rule is that the ball is always going to start mostly in the direction of the club face. And what that means is wherever this club face is pointing at contact, it's going to start mostly in that direction. I say mostly because it's not 100% in that direction, but just for simplicity's sake, I would just kind of think mostly in 100% in that direction. Actually, it's about 80%, is it? But for the sake of this, I would think pretty much 100% in that direction, just to make it easy. Then what's going to happen is the ball is going to curve away from your club path. And what that means is the club path is the direction the club head is moving through contact. So if I'm a right-handed golfer and I have this club head moving from outside, this would be outside my hands, to inside, it's moving to the left, the ball is going to curve away from that direction. If my face is pointed, it's going to start in the direction of the face and then curve away from my club path. So just as an example here, if I'm coming into contact and I have a square club face, okay, and then my path is moving out to in. So I'm squaring up the face to the target, but my path is moving out to in, meaning my path is going to the left. that ball is going to start mostly in the direction of the club face. If my face is square to the target, it's going to start at the target. So it's going to start at the target, and then it's going to curve away from the path. If my path is moving to the left, that means that my ball is going to curve to the right. The further those are apart from each other, the further apart the face and the path are from each other, the more curvature you're going to have on the shot. So if you imagine, if I have the face really open and I'm swinging really to the left, that ball is going to start to the right because my face is open, and it's going to curve like crazy because I'm swinging a lot to the left. Now, let's say that I'm coming into contact and my face is closed. It's pointed left of the target. I'm also kind of swinging very similar in that same direction. This would be a pull, right? So my ball is going to start left. And since there isn't a lot of curvature, since there isn't a lot of difference between my face and my path, there's not going to be a lot of curvature there. So if you understand that, then it's going to be very easy for you to know if you were swinging into out, out to in, so on and so forth. What makes it difficult is that this only applies to when you hit it in the center of the club face. If you are all over the club face at first, it's very unstable. If you hit it out on the toe, what happens is the face will twist and the face will actually open up more. So the ball will start much more right. It will, depending on how far you hit it off the toe, but it will start more right than it normally would for a right-handed golfer. And then depending on how far you hit it off the toe and many other factors, it may do something that's called gear. It may have gear effect on it, which may make the ball come back. So if you've ever hit a ball off the toe and watched it kind of start to the right, you felt that club kind of twist open in your hand, you watched that ball start out to the right, and then it kind of had a draw spin on it. It kind of drew back. That's called gear effect. That doesn't mean that you swung with a nice draw. What that means is that you hit it off the toe and the ball geared. Well, what can happen sometimes, because when you get out on the way, if you miss the face, the center of the face by a lot, what can happen is the face just becomes very, very unstable. So it may not gear at all. So it could be the difference between a shot that maybe doesn't go very far, but has draws or even hooks a lot, and a ball that just goes straight to the right. So if you're missing the center of the face quite often, it can make things very, very difficult for you to be very consistent, because you're going to have that two-way miss. If you're hitting it out on the toe every time, you're going to have balls that just go way right. I mean, 45 degrees to the right, basically. And you're going to have some shots that just snap hook left on you. So take a look. If you're having misses like that and you're feeling that club face twist in your hand, use some foot powder spray or something and see where you're striking on the club face. You want to get that worked out to where you're striking that more in the center of the face. If you can get it in the center of the face, at that point, it just boils down to your face and your path and getting that worked out to hitting it much better. But like I said, it's nice to have all these devices like the Flight Scope, the TrackMan, GC Quad. They give you all these cool numbers, and they're very valuable devices that can give you those numbers. But really, people have been playing golf for a long time without these devices. Jack Nicklaus, and you can just think of all the greats. Even Tiger, when he was coming along initially, for sure, didn't have any of these devices. They just knew ball flight laws, and they knew that they needed to make adjustments. Now, they didn't know that they were swinging 5 degrees into out or out to in. They just knew that it was out to in and that they needed to get it more into out, or vice versa, or whatever it might be. So these devices are nice to have, but really you don't have to have them. If you understand ball flight laws, then it makes things very, very easy for you to make adjustments. It's like a calculator, right? These calculators, they're all really nice to have. But if you know how to divide and add numbers together, and like the law, mathematical laws and principles, you can actually solve it on your own, and you don't necessarily need a calculator all the time to do some simple math. But some people, they rely on these calculators to be able to do those things. You don't have to be that way with the golf swing. If you understand some simple ball flight laws, it's very, very easy to go out there and be able to adjust what you need to do to get your ball flight shaped out. All right, so keep posting your questions. It looks like I'll refresh this to see if some questions have been posted, but I'm not seeing any on here. It's making me put in my password now, so bear with me here. Hopefully I remember it. All right. Looks like we got a couple questions in here. So it just wasn't updating, so I do apologize. All right. So it looks like we got several questions in here. All right, great. So I just what question I answered? Okay. So David F says, my arms are parallel in the downswing. Parallel in the downswing. How likely is it that students clear their hips too quickly and spin out of control? I was previously taught to post up on my lead leg with the hips 3 degrees open when my hands are nearing my hips in the downswing. So you're new clearing the hips video with Clay last week. I would like to hear more how soon and how much my hips can clear and up to what point the shoulders remain behind. Okay, so posted. So behind my arms. Okay, so basically you can't clear your hips too much. You can't open up your hips too much. That's really what it comes down to. You really can't open up your hips too much. What can happen is that your upper body just needs to be in sync with your lower body. That's really what it comes down to. So if you're opening up your hips a lot, meaning I'm coming into contact, I have my hips. I mean, look at Justin Thomas. Look at Dustin Johnson, right? Their hips at contact, I mean, they're really open, like 70, 60 degrees open at contact. Very, very open with the pelvis. But their upper body is in sync with their lower body. And what that means is that they're not getting this club stuck behind them, and they're also not getting this club working over the top. It's in sync with the lower body, meaning they're getting this club working down in the slot as they're coming into contact. Now, you have to be flexible to be able to do that, but if you're coming into contact and you are opening your hips like this, but your trail arm is, your elbow is kind of stuck behind you a little bit, you're going to have to make a compensation from here to get to the golf ball. So you may end up just blocking it out to the right or hitting a big snap hook and your path just being swinging too much into out, or you may try to flip this club, get that elbow going out away from your body. So maybe you're here, you're stuck, you got the body opened up, you got that elbow kind of stuck behind you, but then you do one of these, you try to bring that elbow out away from your body to try and compensate for that. So really what it comes down to is you really can't open your hips too much, but what can happen is your upper body can get out of sync with your lower body. So that comes down to either getting stuck, getting the elbow kind of stuck behind you, meaning if you think about your seam of your shirt, you have a seam that goes down the side of your shirt here, or whatever it might be, typically straight down from the elbow pit, or not the elbow pit, the armpit, all the way down the side of your shirt. There's usually a seam right there. Typically, you want to see that arm, that elbow coming in right to the seam. So if you have that elbow kind of like this, then a lot of times you'll be getting stuck in the swing, and you'll be swinging too much out into out. You got to have a ton of rotation to compensate for that, like a Jim Furyk type swing. If you look at Jim Furyk, his elbow is actually kind of stuck behind him, but he is so open at contact that he's okay to do that, and he crowds the ball. He's got kind of a funky swing. Obviously, it works for him. He's shot some crazy low scores on tour, but he's on top of the ball, and he is really opening up a lot. He's basically at contact in this kind of position. So his elbow is kind of stuck behind him, but he's in contact in this kind of position. So if you look from face on, he kind of looks like that at contact. That's basically what he's doing. So like I said, you can't open up your hips too much. It's really about having everything synced up. You don't want to be coming over the top, and you don't want to be getting stuck in the downswing. Otherwise, there's compensations that you have to make. So you got to look at what's allowing you. The whole reason why you want to open up your hips is so that you can release that club out in front. That's the whole reason why you want to do it. The main reason is also to create momentum in the swing. But the main reason is to get this club to release out in front. Because if I'm coming into contact and my hips are dead square, meaning I'm coming into contact and I'm like this at contact, I'm kind of moving my hips toward the ball and I'm flipping through contact, that's what's going to happen. I'm going to flip. If I'm squaring up, I'm stalling out, I'm going to end up doing that through contact. I need my body to be opening up in order to get my hands out in front of the golf ball. That's about the only way you're going to be able to do it. It's basically impossible at full speed. Never seen anyone be able to do it. It's basically impossible to be able to swing in full speed and get your hands out in front with forward shaft lean. Now, you might be able to do it in a chip. You might be able to get into a chip position where it's really low speed and get like this and just swing the arms like this in front of the body and have forward shaft lean. But even then, you're fighting it. You're probably holding it off. But at full speed, there's just no way you can come into contact like that. It's just not going to happen. You've got to rotate your body open to be able to make that happen. In order to have the upper body in sync with that, you want to follow the system that we talk about. You want to make sure that you're getting some lag. You want to make sure that you're shallowing out the club. This is what we talk about in the video that David is referencing there. So not everyone's going to be able to open up their hips 80 degrees like Jim Furyk. Some people, their hips are going to be open 30, 35 degrees, and it's going to put them in a pretty good position. Some people, it's going to be 40, 50 degrees. That's generally where we see tour players, or somewhere in that 40, 50 degrees rotated open with the pelvis as they're coming into contact. That's typically where you're going to see a tour player. That's going to allow you to release that club out in front, which is going to allow you to get some good forward shaft lean and compression on the ball. But everyone's a little bit different. Not everyone's going to be able to open up their hips as much as Jim Furyk or something like that. It takes some flexibility to be able to do that. But it sounds like you're on the right track. If you're coming into contact and you're right here, and I think that's what you were mentioning is your hands are somewhere in this area and you're 30 degrees open. That means when you get right here, you're probably close to 40, 45 degrees. So sounds like you're on the right track there. So I would say that's probably pretty fine. All right. So Tyrone T says, I have trouble keeping the lag angle on the down. I keep seeing my video from parallel. I'm starting to cast. How do I maintain the lag from parallel to contact? My wrists are not flexible. So that's actually where you do start releasing the club, is from that lead arm parallel to the ground. So the club actually starts releasing about right here. So if you're going up to the top, you're generating that angle here. This is where the angle starts getting bigger. But the problem may be that you're getting here, and then you're just releasing the club right here. So you may be getting that angle of lag where you should, but the problem is the release. So there's all kinds of things that could be going on there. It could be that you're coming down steep. So if you're coming down steep, what that means is when you're coming down in the downswing, that lead arm parallel to the ground position, if this butt into the club, you're looking from down the line here. If you see that butt into the club pointing inside the golf ball, meaning let's pretend that this light or this socket right here, this electrical socket, let's pretend that that's about where the golf ball is. If you're coming down and you're seeing this butt into the club pointing inside the electrical socket, inside the golf ball, that's steep. The reason why you may flip or release the club early when you do that is because this club head is off plane when it's up here. You basically have to continue to kind of come down steep to come down into the golf ball. So when you do that, you're either going to put that club right into the ground, which most people aren't going to do. Intuitively, we know, okay, don't shove the club in the ground 2 feet behind the golf ball. You're going to make some sort of compensation. What some people do is they'll come over the top to be able to not put the club in the ground behind the golf ball, but to be able to get to the golf ball. But when you come over the top, what are you doing? You're swinging too much out the end. Slice and pull is what you're going to end up with. What most people do to get this club back on plane is that they'll stand up. And when they stand up, that raises the handle, drops the head. The head's now moving from the inside, and now I'm swinging on plane. But the problem is that I have to release my club to get to the golf ball when that happens. So what we need to do is get this club nice and shallowed out. So now this club head's on plane, and I can just rotate into contact without having to make that compensation in the downswing. So that's the first thing that I would look at to see if you are shallowing the club. That's going to be the move course on the website, and I'll tell you how to get to that here in a moment. The next thing that you may want to look at, maybe you are shallowing out the club. Maybe you're in a great position right here, but you still, from this position, you get that lag, but from this position, you start to release that club early, and you're coming into contact like this. So what that means is that you need to learn how to square the face in the right way, and or you need to learn how to release that club out in front. So if you are struggling with really trying to dominate with that trail hand, that's how you square the face, is by coming into contact and doing this action, really pushing through with the trail wrist. Maybe you're trying to help it in the air. Maybe you're trying that. Maybe you feel like that's really powerful and that's adding speed. Maybe you're afraid of hitting the ground and you're trying to, just kind of brush it off the turf there and come in really, really level with the turf. Maybe those things are going on. There's all kinds of reasons why you might be doing that. But what you need to learn is how to square the face up properly as you come into contact. And if you do that, you're going to be in this kind of position right here. Now look at my trail hand. My trail hand is in a bent back position here. This feels very weak for a lot of people, and it's why a lot of people struggle with it. So again, that's the second part of the move. Maybe you just don't know how to release that club out in front. You feel like you need to release all your power at the golf ball. You're getting the lag here, but everything you feel like everything's got to release at the golf ball. And when you do that, you're going to lose. You're going to cast the club at the golf ball. We want to cast the club, but we want to cast that club toward the target. We want to be, everyone's doing this motion in the golf swing. Tour players are doing this motion in the golf swing. It's just that they're doing it out here. They're casting the club to where it's releasing at this point out here. If I rewind my swing from that point, look at where I am at contact now. Now I have forward shaft lean. So what you may need to do is learn how to release more out in front, maybe toward the target instead of at the golf ball. And that's going to be the straight line release course. So you can get to both of these courses, the move and the straight line release, by clicking the instruction tab at the top of the screen there and then clicking on the Top Speed Golf System. Once you click on that, you'll see all those courses there. You'll see the straight line release and you'll see the move. Now, important note here. I want you to make sure that you're nailing all the other pieces of the Top Speed Golf System before you move on to these two pieces. It's really, really important. The reason is that if your spine is not correct, your stable fluid spine, meaning if I'm leaning toward the target at the top, or my spine is moving all over the place in the swing, or I'm very vertical as I'm coming into contact, I look like this, you're going to have a near impossible time of getting that straight line release or the move right. So make sure that your stable fluid spine is good. Number two, your power turn has to be good. If you have a short turn, you look like this, you're going to be rushing that downswing and casting the club anyway. So get that power turn right. We need to make sure that we're turning our shoulders around 90 degrees in the backswing so that we get good power. So make sure that you look good there. Lag. It sounds like you're good with the lag. It's just that you're starting to release it. But still make sure, it's hard for me to know for sure without seeing your swing, but make sure that you're good there with the lag. Make sure that we have a sharper angle as we're coming down in the downswing. We're creating that lag there. And then also the compression line. If you look at our compression line, that's the line that goes from our lead shoulder, our hip, and our ankle, and that's at contact. I want to see all those in a nice straight line here, slightly angled away from the target. If I'm leaning toward the target, that's going to get my spine leaning toward the target, and that's going to promote chopping down and early release into the golf ball. If I'm too far angled, it's fairly rare, but if I'm really bumped out and really too far angled away, I can't rotate my hips. So my hips are going to be locked up. If you look here from this angle, my hips are going to be locked up and square, and I'm going to release the club early anyway. You're going to be fighting physics. So make sure you have the other four pieces of the Top Speed Golf System in order before you move on to that. Otherwise, you're trying to run before you can walk, all right? So it's just going to make it really, really difficult if you do that. So work through the Top Speed Golf System. Then once you get there, then you can work through the move or the straight line release course, or you can kind of do a blend of them together, kind of work through maybe one of the move courses, maybe go through level one of the straight line release, then work through another move video, then work through another straight line release, maybe the level two of the straight line release. You can kind of go about it that way. It's all really self-guided. There's no really wrong way to do it once you get to that point, but you got to go through it. You got to do your due diligence and get through all the other pieces before you try to do the more advanced courses like the straight line release and the move. All right. So Thomas C says, can you please talk about loading up the right side while simultaneously starting forward shift in the middle of the takeaway. Seems contradictory. I understand what you mean there. I think people are trying to separate these things. So basically, what he's talking about are the several videos where we talk about how your momentum is moving to your lead side before you're completing the backswing. And I think people always think about this in a sense of pressure. That's basically what's going on, is that you're still building up the pressure in your trail foot. What you're feeling in your feet is not going to be the same. So you're not going to feel a ton of pressure on your lead foot before you start the downswing. That's not what's going to be happening. Your momentum is going to be moving that way. So I think the best way to kind of think about it is when you're walking. So if I'm walking forward here, I'm pushing back on my trail foot and my momentum's moving forward. So I'm putting pressure in that direction with my trail foot, but I'm moving, my momentum's actually moving forward. Same thing's happening in the golf swing. If I'm going up to the top, I'm loading up, I'm putting pressure in my trail foot. I'm loading up, loading up, loading up. In this last part of the backswing, I'm going to get a little bit of momentum moving forward. It's not a lot. I mean, I'm not going like this and then like that. I'm getting a little bit of momentum moving forward. So that way, before my arms start down in the downswing, I'm getting a little bit of pressure in that lead foot. And that's allowing me to start the downswing from the ground up. That's allowing me to get my hips turning. And my hips turning are going to allow me to get my thorax turning. That's your rib cage here. And my thorax turning is going to get my shoulders turning. My shoulders going is going to get my arms and my hands are going to get that club going. So you're going to get that good kinematic sequence. If you go up to the top here, you're loaded up here, and then you start down with the arms right away, and you don't do a weight shift, you're just going to flip because it's too late. You can't shift your weight. What shifts your weight is really just the momentum of the club going through contact. So if you're looking at your swing and you're seeing at contact, you're coming in and you're flat-footed, meaning at contact here. Now that you can see my feet, I'm coming into contact and I look like this. I'm firmly planting both my feet. That means you have no weight shift, really. It's really just your arms flying in front of your body is making the momentum go to your lead side. You want yourself to put the momentum to the lead side. You want that to be happening in the very last part of the backswing. The very last part of the backswing. There's actually a great video that Clay just released a few weeks ago. How to start the downswing correctly, I think it's called, or something like that. I can actually look it up real quickly for you, but it's got a great drill in there to help you with that. Now, if it's something that you're not comfortable with, it's gonna feel awkward or kind of weird at first. But once you get the hang of it and you feel how powerful it is, getting that pressure and building momentum with the lower body, you're gonna be able to create a lot more speed. And you're also gonna have a much better swing mechanics. Now, don't get me wrong. You can play great golf by just swinging all arms. You absolutely can. You can play great golf and get a lot of speed from doing that, but it's going to be very, very difficult to be consistent. Your timing has to be dead on. If you create momentum with the lower body, 85% of your speed most of the time is typically coming from just your upper body, your arms. So if I didn't move my hips at all and I just brought this club back and just swung it through as hard as I could probably swing with about 85% of my speed. I bet you I could swing about 100 miles per hour just throwing my arms as hard as I could at. A lot of my speed is coming from that. My hips aren't really moving that quickly, but what they're doing is they're creating momentum. They're creating momentum, and they're also allowing me to release this club out here. Because if I just swing all arms, what am I doing? I have to release this club early. I have to flip. I have to add loft to the face. I have to make this face less powerful. This club is a 50-degree wedge. If I have that straight up and down, that's 50 degrees. When you flip, it's pretty close to straight up and down as you're coming into contact. If I get forward shaft lead, which a typical tour player is taking about 30% of the loft off the club. For a 50-degree wedge, what is that? About 12 or so degrees, something like that, 13 degrees. They're taking quite a bit of loft off of that face there. Now they're taking this 50 degrees and putting it into 38, 37 degrees at contact. That's transferring a lot more energy to the golf ball. That's how a lot of tour players can hit an 8-iron 200 yards, is because they're de-lofting the face and they're also adding the speed in there with it. It's not just they swing faster. It's really, a lot of it is they're taking their 8-iron and they're hitting it with the same loft that you might be hitting with your 6-iron. They're taking a lot of loft off of the face there. So that's a big, big part of it. So you need to make sure that you're getting that weight shift to your lead side so that you can have proper swing mechanics. Go check out that drill that I was just talking about. I'll actually pull it up here. See if I can find it for you real quick. Yeah, I apologize. I was out shooting just a minute ago. My allergies are kind of playing with me a little bit. Sorry if I sound a little bit nasally. All right. There we go. Yep. So L037, best tip to start your downswing. That's the one that I'm talking about. It's released on February 11th. So if you click the house icon at the top of the page there, that's going to take you to the home page. If you go to the home page and you look under latest videos, you'll see today, or not today's, but last week's video on March 3rd. You'll see February 25th, February 19th, and then February 11th, which is the L037. Best tip to start your downswing video. Great drill to get a better feeling and understanding for this correct weight shift that I'm talking about. All right. So Assam N says, need help in aligning body towards the target without using guide sticks. So what you need to do is actually go to the range and get comfortable with using an alignment stick on the ground. And what that will do is that will train your body to know how to line up. So go to the range, put the stick on the ground, aim it at a target, get comfortable with, your body is going to start putting it together. Okay. So this is what straight to the target feels like. And then just keep hitting balls with that. And as you do that, it's going to help you. The other thing that I'd recommend doing is using an intermediate target. And what that means is get behind the ball and choose a point between your ball and the target, a point that's about maybe a foot or two in front of the golf ball. And then when you go to line up to the golf ball, just line up that face with that intermediate target, that thing that's, that you chose, that's 1 or 2 feet in front of your target. Line up the face and then look at the target and then line up your feet. And then you should be pretty well lined up from there. But if you practice on the range, always having that alignment stick there on the range, then you'll start putting it together what it feels like to be lined up pretty straight. All right, so Ed D says, I'm working on getting the straight line release from last parallel with hands in front of the trail thigh, hips square to the target line, then rotating and straightening, posting my left leg and hip release out in front. I'm able to do it starting from that point, but in the full swing, I see on camera that my hips are already square at the left arm parallel max lag position. Yeah, so your hips should be square to that point. Typically, at this point in the downswing, your hips are going to be pretty close to square. So at the top of the swing, you're going to have your hips about 45 degrees rotated. So at the top of the swing here, I'm going to have about 45 degrees of rotation. And then as I get down to this point where my lead arm is parallel to the ground, if we go to this angle, I'm going to be back to square, about right in there. And then from there, I'm going to rotate into contact. So it sounds like you're on the right track there. Your hips should be pretty close to square there at that point. You just need to keep rotating, keep pushing and rotating open as you're coming into contact to get the hips opened up at contact. So Tyrone T, another question here says, I have trouble keeping the lag angle on the downswing. I keep seeing my video from parallel. I start to cast on lag. So I already answered that question, Tyrone, I think. Yeah, so I just answered that. So we'll skip that one. James Q says, thank you for pointing out that some people are already shallowed out enough on their swing. I've been trying to shallow out with no luck, and my game went downhill. After watching you, I played without shallowing and did much better. It appears that I'm already shallowed enough without trying for more. Yeah, so what James is talking about there is what shallowing out the club basically means is just getting the club on plane. So if you're already getting the club on plane, then you've already shallowed out the club. The reason why people say it's shallowing out is that most people are swinging in the backswing, as they should be, swinging above the plane. And that's because they're getting the club up higher. They're going on a more vertical plane in the backswing. And the reason why we want to do that and why that's good is because it allows you to create more space and time to accelerate the club. If you are bringing the club really, really flat like this, and basically the club's already basically on plane, But if you're really, really flat like this, it's just hard to get a lot of speed from there. So if you're someone who's struggling with speed and distance, then a flat swing probably isn't the best one for you to use. It may be a little bit more consistent. You might be able to hit the ball a lot better or a little bit better. But in reality, you're just not going to hit it very far. And you're going to be relying on your ball striking to ever play decent at all. So what you want to do is get the club more vertical. And then from there, you shallow it to get it back in the downswing. So if you're someone who's already coming down to this position, shallowing it even more is just going to make things more difficult. Now, if I'm in this kind of position, I'm either going to swing way too much into out, maybe chunk the ball, because when I swing too much into out, what's going to happen is my trail shoulder is going to be moving closer to the ground. This club's going to want to bottom out before the golf ball. I'm going to hit a lot of chunks and tops and things like that. And if I do manage to hit the ball, I'm going to hit a lot of blocks, pushes out to the right if I'm a right-handed golfer. I may even hit some snap hooks. If I do manage to time it up perfectly, then I might hit some nice heavy draws. But I'm just going to have a hard time being very consistent when you do that. So a lot of times when I see people over shallow it out, they may actually kick this club out with their elbow. So what that would look like is something like this. They'll come out with their elbow and now they're chopping down into it. It just causes a whole host of issues. So all we want to do is get the club going up to the top and get the club coming down on plane in the downswing. As long as that club's working down on plane, you're going to be, as long as it's getting in the slot essentially. And what that means is you're going to see this club kind of working down that trail forearm. You can see there, it's kind of working right down my trail forearm as I'm coming down. That's what we call being in the slot. So as long as you're getting that club to work down in that position, you're going to be in good shape. So if you're working on shallowing out the club and you see that club working down the slot, you're there. You're good. You don't have to do anymore. You're already in the position that you need to be in. But if you see this club working kind of down like this, then you need to get this club shallowed out, because if you're working down steeply, you're going to have to make a compensation. If you see this club working down like this, then you're too shallow. You need to get this club working more down the slot there. So look at your swing on video. You got to look at your swing on video and see what's going on there. But the reason why people call it shallowing is because that's typically what you have to do, because you're getting more vertical. You're taking a more vertical swing in the backswing. You've got to shallow it out in the downswing to get it on plane. All right, so Robert L says, I went through Clay's putting section on the smallest strokes, say 1 to 3 feet. Are your shoulders always moving? I find it hard to move them with such a short stroke. Yeah, it's going to be a small amount. It's not just going to be, if you have a short stroke, it's not just going to be that. It's really just the shoulders that are moving. It's just a small amount. It's just a little rock and back and forth. If it's a 1 to 3 foot putt, a 1 foot putt, that's just a tap in. You really probably don't need to get down and make a whole thing for that. But a 3 foot putt, it's just a short putt. It's just rock the shoulders back and forth, very short amount, not a lot. It's just the shoulders rocking back and forth. That's all it is. James Q says, what are your thoughts on starting my backswing from the impact position? I seem to make better contact when I do this. There must be a downside, or others would do it. Thanks. I wouldn't say there's really any big downside. I guess you're just kind of down when you're in that kind of position. So if you're in your impact position, meaning if I was right here, right, so this would be a good impact position. It's a little bit harder to get to get that big shoulder turn, because if you look here, if I'm in my impact position, I've got my hips rotated open. So if I'm trying to rotate my hips back in the backswing, I'm going from my hips 45 degrees open to my hips 45 degrees closed. I have to turn my hips 90 degrees to get to where I want to go in the backswing. So I'm guessing what you're doing is you're just putting your hands in the impact position. So you're probably just getting your hands kind of up here, which again, that's completely fine to do. But it's a little bit harder to get to where you want to go in the backswing when you're doing that. So really what it comes down to is, just because you get into this position at impact, that doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. But if it's helping you to get into a better impact position, then by all be it. Look at Matt Wolff. He's his second year on the PGA Tour, won in his rookie year, and he does this kind of kick forward kind of thing. And that's basically what he's doing. He's just getting into his impact position. I watched a video with him where he talked about why he did that. And that's because he was working on getting in the impact position, and the drill just kind of became part of his swing because he hit the ball better whenever he worked on getting into that position before he swung the club. So it's not completely out of the ordinary. And who knows, if you see Matt Wolff starting to explode, I think he's got a ton of potential. He's got a lot of speed. He's got a kind of crazy looking swing. Really brings it up outside and then shallows it out a ton. But you might see more people out there starting to do that. It's just like with Tiger Woods. When Tiger Woods was exploding, early 2000s, everybody was trying to do exactly what Tiger Woods was doing. Everyone wanted to be good because they wanted to work on what Tiger Woods is doing. So if you see someone who's doing something kind of interesting in their swing that maybe not a lot of people do, and you see them being really successful with it, you might start seeing it out of other people. So again, if you watch Matt Wolff, you're going to see him. He goes like this right before he hits the ball. So if you look at him before he hits the ball, he'll go like this. He gets into that impact position, and then he starts his backswing like that. And he brings the club up like that, and then really shallows it out. Oops, almost threw me off balance there. Then he really shallows out in the downswing. So there's nothing wrong with it. But like I said, the downside is that if you're in that kind of position at impact, it's just harder to rotate your hips in the backswing. So it's possible that you may be restricting yourself in the backswing. You may be able to get into a better impact position, but it's possible that your speed may be going down. Who knows? I mean, I don't know without seeing your swing, but it's possible that may be what's going on. It's really to each their own. If it helps you to get into a better position, then by all means, you should keep doing it for sure. So Stephen N says, Q just got outside to hit some golf. I think he means golf balls. First time this year. I live in Michigan. Seems like I'm getting a lot stinging in my hands, and contact sounds like I'm slapping the ball. Carry's also off by 15 yards. Any ideas to get back to more normal session? My guess is that you're hitting it in the heel. That's what it sounds like to me. You're hitting it kind of close to the hosel, and that can put some vibration through the shaft. Also, if it's colder temperatures, you're going to get that feeling a little bit as well. But I would use some foot powder spray. See where you're striking it on the club face. Use like Dr. Scholl's odor eaters, spray it on the club face, hit a ball, see where you're striking it. Odds are you're probably hitting it in the heel. If you are, then try to hit it in the toe. If you try to hit it in the toe, it's more than likely going to move that strike closer to the center of the face. If it's still in the heel, exaggerate it even more. Get it. You may even need to feel like you're coming in. If my fist is the golf ball, you're coming in and missing the golf ball. That's maybe what you may need to feel like to get it to where you want to go. So exaggerate it as much as you need to move that strike closer to the center. Now, if you actually strike it off the toe, all that means is that you overdid it. You did a good job of changing what you were trying to do. And all you got to do at that point is just ease off of that to get it more in the center of the face. So see where you're striking it. Most likely it's in the heel. Adjust that feeling to get it to where you want to go. All right. So Charlie G says, please explain the term cover the ball. Also, when should a right-hand golfer begin to turn the doorknob to the left? Thanks. All right. So Charlie, covering the ball, basically what that means is as you're coming into contact, you're feeling like you're over the golf ball. My chest is covering the golf ball. There's all kinds of things that could be covering the golf ball. Some people say, they're coming in and it's their face that's covering the golf ball. It's their chest that's covering it. It's over top of the golf ball. A lot of people say it's their hand. My trail hand is coming in, and that's covering. I feel like I'm covering the golf ball with my trail hand. So that's an indication of a good impact position. People who aren't covering the ball are going to look something like this. They're coming into contact. My chest is moving away from the golf ball because I'm flipping because I have to make room for the club. So my chest moves away. I'm early extending, and also if I'm doing that, what's happening with my hand? My hand isn't covering the ball anymore. My palm of my hand's pointing up to the sky a little bit because I'm flipping through contact. So that's basically what covering the ball means. It means that they're coming down and I have my palm of my hand coming down. I feel like I'm covering the golf ball with my hand, with my chest, with my face, whatever it might be. But that's kind of the feeling, is that you're basically on top of the golf ball when you're coming in. Now, as far as turning the doorknob to the left, you're actually going to be turning the doorknob to the right. That's the feeling that you're going to have. So you're turning the doorknob to the right in the downswing. So that's shallowing out the club. You're turning the door out to the right. Now, from your perspective right here, looking at me, it's going to look like you're turning the door out to the left. But for me, holding the club, I'm seeing I'm turning the door out to the right. That shallows the club. So again, I can stay in my posture in the downswing. We talked about that earlier in the office hours. James M says, do you know what Eric Gorno was talking about, the closed coil? I see Clay was looking at. I have no idea. I have no idea what the closed coil is. Sorry, James. I wish I could help more, but I'm not familiar with what that is. And I'll do my best to answer these questions. We got a few more minutes left, so I'll do my best to answer the questions here. And I may actually, Ed has asked a bunch of questions, so I apologize, Ed. I may come back to yours, but I'm answering questions from people that maybe haven't gotten the questions answered yet. So James G says, do you open your hip the same with a driver versus the pitching wedge? Yes, it's basically the exact same. You might be a little bit more open with the driver, but that's not something that you're like actively doing. The only reason is because with a pitching wedge, you're coming down and the ball's right here, right? It's somewhere, it's close to the middle of your stance. That's where you're striking it. With the driver, it's further up in your stance. So you're hitting it a little bit later in your swing. And because of that, your hips may be a little bit more open. But again, that's something that's just naturally going to happen because you're hitting the ball later in your swing. It's not something I'm trying to get my hips more open with the driver. It's just naturally happening because the ball is more forward in the swing. So again, we just got a few more minutes here. I'm going to try and answer questions for people that I haven't answered questions from. David F., I've answered a question from you. Timothy F. So, hey, Q, for maximum club head speed, I'm working on a quicker tempo. Will a faster backswing increase wrist hinge on the way down? What is a tour player's ratio backswing to downswing? So, some good questions here. So a faster backswing doesn't necessarily mean you're going to hinge the club more, but a faster backswing can help you to get some more club head speed. But it's really to each their own. I would experiment a little bit and find what works best for you. But basically, what you're doing is you're building up kinetic energy in the backswing if you're taking a little bit faster of a backswing. So there's a difference between taking a faster backswing and taking a really quick backswing. So make sure that you're making a full backswing. That's really the most important thing. If you're working on maximum club head speed, the most important thing, there's no more important thing than making sure you get a full shoulder turn. If they're doing anything to improve your distance, make sure that you're getting that big shoulder turn. So what I find with a lot of people, they work on their tempo. They try to manipulate their swing to get this certain tempo. Typically, if you have a full backswing, your tempo is going to be great. That's typically what happens. People who have poor tempo are people who restrict their backswing and try to swing quick in the backswing. So try to make sure that you're getting that full backswing. Now, there's actually a book out there. It's called Tour Tempo. They measured a ton of tour players, and they basically found that it's a 3-to-1 ratio. So if you imagine if the downswing is taking about a third of a second, which is fairly typical, downswing is usually about a quarter to a third of a second, you're going to see a backswing that's about 3/4 of a second to a full second, somewhere in that area. But I wouldn't try to hit those times perfectly. I would really work on getting that proper shoulder turn and then getting that proper sequencing in the downswing. If you do that, then your tempo is going to be fantastic if you do that, most likely. So that's what I'd recommend doing, and that's what we work on in the 20-minute distance fix. That's going to be the best bet for you. I can tell you right now, there's not a single tour player out there that's working on having a backswing that's exactly 1 second and a downswing that's exactly a third of a second. They're not working on that. They're working on getting proper sequencing, getting a full backswing and things like that. Those who maybe are struggling to get a full backswing. So that's what I'd be working on. And if you do that, your tempo is going to be very good. So Ed, again, I've answered some questions from you already. So last question here from David L. I apologize for, a lot of you answered multiple questions. I'm just trying to answer as many questions as I can from as many people. I just have an hour here. So David L. is going to be the last question here. So if you ask a bunch of questions, just come back. We'll be back here tomorrow and all week during the office hours and ask your questions at that time. But like I said, a lot of you have asked multiple questions. So I'm just going to answer David's here to finish up. So David L. says, I'm having issues getting an inside-out club path. I'm turning my body, but still end up outside in, is the most likely cause that I am casting. The most likely cause is probably from your spine angle. So that's what I would check first. Make sure that you are angled away at address, angled away at the top, and then getting more angled away as you're coming into contact. That's going to be from the stable and fluid spine course. So if I'm coming up to the top and I'm getting to where I'm vertical, if you look at the overall angle of my body here, I'm leaning toward the target here. If I'm in this kind of position right here, what I'm going to want to do in the downswing is my elbow is going to, or my shoulder is going to want to go out and go out down to the golf ball. So if you look from this position, from down the line, if I'm leaning toward the target, I'm going to want to go like that. But if I'm angled away and I'm turning my shoulders going back, now I feel like I want to work this club from the inside. So if you look from this angle, I'm angled away as I go up the top. Now I want to feel like I want to come down from the inside. So if I'm angled toward the target, my shoulder is going to want to go that way. If I'm angled down away from the target, my shoulder is going to want to go down and work from the inside. Also, if I'm angled toward the target, I don't have any space for this club to work from the inside, right? So if I'm angled away from the target, now I've got this space right here. If I pull my shirt tight, now you can see I've got this space right here that I can work that club from the inside. So I look at your stable fluid spine, make sure that you're good there. If you are good there, your stable fluid spine, everything looks nice and angled away throughout the swing, and you're angled away, but you just want to go like that, then what I would recommend doing is working through our Never Slice Again course. That's going to get you to get that club working from the inside. We really work on, instead of the club flying so much in front of the body, you're going to feel like it's falling from the side of the body, swinging along your hip, basically, is the feeling that you're going to have there when you're working through those drills. So go to the Never Slice Again course. Start working through those drills as well. So how do you get to those drills? Number one, if you want to get to any of the drills or any of the courses on the website, it's very, very easy to get to them. All you got to do is click the house icon at the top of the page. That's going to take you to the home page. If you scroll down on the home page, you'll see a list of all the courses on the website. So click on the stable fluid spine, check your spine angles there, look at that on video, see what's going on there, check your spine angles. If your spine angles are leaning toward the target, go work on that. Work through level 1, level 2, level 3. Get that to where that's ingrained in second nature so that you don't have to worry about coming over the top anymore, because that's just going to make it a lot easier to swing from the inside. If that spine angles look great, then it's really just a matter of how you're bringing the club down the downswing, and you're going to want to work through the Never Slice Again course, because that course is going to be all about getting that club to work more from the inside. And again, to get to that course, just click the house icon, scroll down. You'll see a list of all the courses on the website and click on the Never Slice Again course. So I do apologize for those that asked multiple questions. I'm sorry I didn't get to everybody's questions. But again, I just have an hour here to answer everybody's questions. I wish I could stay here all night and answer everybody's questions, but unfortunately, there's only so many hours in the day. So everybody have a good rest of your evening, and I will talk to you next time.